So everyone here is a Christian, right?
Yes.
You admit it. You're a Christian. Have you ever wondered, is there a list or a manual somewhere to tell me how to act like a Christian, how to live like a Christian? Well, you know, of course there is, and it's in the Bible. We're going to talk about a small section of the Bible today that tells you exactly that. Behave like a Christian is what it's called. There are ways all over the New Testament, but I found one little specific area that we're going to talk about today in the book of Romans. Paul wrote the letter to the church in Rome probably 40 years after the resurrection of Jesus Christ, and he was writing to a group of relatively new Christians in Rome. When the church was first formed in Rome, it was all Jewish people that lived there because, you know, Paul was the Jewish. He was from the tribe of Benjamin. He was a Jewish person, even though he persecuted Jews before he was converted and went from being Saul to Paul. So he's writing this letter to this church in Rome, and most of them were Jewish. Then they started having a few Gentiles come into the church. And then this Roman emperor named Claudius, about 40 AD, 45 AD, expelled all the Jewish people from Rome. So all there was left was Gentiles, mainly. There were a few that stuck around and I think hid out. But so the church in Rome mainly became mostly Gentiles. And here's this Jewish person writing a letter to them, telling them how to be Christians. It's sort of ironic that he was able to do this, but he did. My Bible is the New King James Version. It's the MacArthur Study Bible, same one that Billy Ruth uses. And in there, different parts of chapters are entitled. They'll have something written that, you know, this is what this next section is going to be like. Some of your Bibles may be that way too. Well, I found a section in there in Romans that says, behave like a Christian. And this is what Paul was writing to the people in Rome. You want to be like a Christian, this is how you need to behave. And it's a list of good ways for you to act and be if you want to look and you want people to think that you are a Christian. It's a very good list, and we're going to go over it in just a few minutes. It's Romans 12, verses 9 through 21. It's a step-by-step, basically, instruction manual on how to live as a Christian. And that's what we're going to look at today. People will know you are a Christian if you live this way. They'll see you doing the right things at the right time, saying the right things at the right time, and treating people the way you should treat them. That's what this is all about. Yeah, I know I like to tell you stories about myself all the time, and y'all know why I do that, and why some of them are true and some of them are not. That's so when people get together and gossip about me, they'll argue. Well, I heard it this way. No, I heard it this way. That's why I tell them different sometimes. I just remembered one I'll tell you about now. Y'all know that I used to like to play golf. I wasn't very good at it, but you know, I was okay. I broke 100 a couple of times on 9 holes. And I was going to go play one time, and my eyesight was going. You know, after I got 40, my eyesight got really bad, and I told Billy, I'm just going to give up golf. I can't see. I hit the ball, and it's gone. I have no idea where it's going. And she says, well, take your uncle. He's got perfect eyesight. And I said, really? He's almost 90. And she said, take him. He can see everything. So I took him to play golf. And we were out there playing golf. The first tee, I walked up there, bing, and it goes flying off. And I turned around and I said, did you see where it went? And he said, I sure did. And I said, well, where'd it go? And he said, I forgot. Now let's see what this section of Romans says. Romans 12, verses 9 through 21. Now, you know, I was not going to make Chris read all of this morning. I was just going to have him read verse 9, which is on the front of your bulletin. But I'm going to go through it all real quick. Let love be, now remember it's entitled, Behave Like a Christian in my Bible, and it may be in some of yours. Let love be without hypocrisy. Abhor what is evil. Cling to what is good. Be kindly affectionate to one another with brotherly love and honor, giving preference to one another. Not lagging in diligent fervent in spirit, serving the Lord, rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, continuing steadfastly in prayer, distributing to the needs of the saints, given to hospitality. See what I mean by this is a list of a good Christian, things a good Christian should do. Slow down. I'm sorry. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice, and weep with those who weep. Be of the same mind toward one another. Do not set your mind on high things, but associate with the humble. Do not be wise in your own opinion. Repay no one evil for evil. Have regard for good things in the sight of all men. If it's possible, as much as depends on you, live peaceably with all men. Beloved, do not avenge yourselves, but rather give place to wrath, for it is written, Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. If your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him a drink, for in so doing you will heap coals of fire on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. That is Romans 12, 9 through 21, entitled Behave Like a Christian. And it tells us exactly what we should do in so many different situations and continue to live a Christian life. This is sort of divided into 4 sections. The first part's personal duties. The second part is family duties. And then duties to people who are not family. And then duties to people who consider us their enemies. It tells you that pretty much takes care of everyone, doesn't it? That little section right there takes care of everybody in your life. And it really does. Now let's look at what that section told us. I'm going to go over with some of them. It first says, let love be without hypocrisy. It's talking about Christian love, which is more of a brotherly love than a love that's based on other things. It's showing sincerely and without being self-centered that you care for someone else. That's what it means by love without hypocrisy. Not loving yourself, loving others and actually showing it. You know, we've said this many times, they will know we are Christians by our love. Abhor what is evil. That's an easy one. Hate. That's what abhor means. Hate evil. And let me tell you folks, it's all around us. It's everywhere. This world is covered in evil and evil things and evil people. It's everywhere, right? Then it says, cling to what is good. That means, just like we talked about a few weeks ago, hold on to what is honorable, what is true, and what is helpful to other people. Be affectionate to one another with brotherly love, just like I just said, brotherly love. That's a Christian type of love for our fellow Christians and for other people. It's a sort of a family type love. It's the love that a close-knit family has for each other, for their parents, for their siblings, for their children. That's what it's talking about here, brotherly love. It's not based on personal attraction or some desire. It's a brotherly type love. And then Paul says, be fervent in spirit. Being fervent means having enough energy and the want to do what is necessary without being pushy about it. You can be a Christian and act like a Christian and be fervent in it even without other people thinking, oh, I don't want to be around him. All he does is talk about the Bible and God. He must think I'm the worst person in the world. You need to know when to say what to say to certain people. But you still need to be fervent in it, meaning you're looking for opportunities to do that. And that's what God wants you to do. And then Paul simply says, serve the Lord. Come to church and look for things to do. Plan a work day, cook a meal, serve other people. Find things to do that need to be done. We do that a lot here. Y'all have really stepped up many, many times to do what needed to be done here. And that is part of serving the Lord. When God presents you an opportunity to do something, be ready to do it. He says, rejoice in hope. Y'all know what our hope is, right? That one day Jesus is going to come back. And he's going to take us out of this old cruel, evil world in the rapture. And then not long after that, he's going to come back and he's going to set up his kingdom. That is our blessed hope, that Jesus will win over the evil. And we need to rejoice in that now, even though it hasn't happened, because we know you've read the book, right? You know how it's going to end. In Daniel, in Revelation, in Thessalonians, and in the Gospels, it tells you. Jesus even tells us how it's going to end. He is going to win. And that is our blessed hope. And we should be happy about that. As a matter of fact, I've told you before, there's nothing in the world wrong with praying for Jesus to come back now. Because that's the ultimate victory that we're living for. When he comes back and overcomes sin and takes over this world. There's nothing wrong with praying for that. And you say, well, you're praying for the end of the world. No, I'm not. Because we know that after he returns, he's going to be here for 1,000 years. I'm not praying for the end of the world. When Jesus returns the second time, it's not the end of the world. The world is destroyed and recreated 1,000 years, the millennium after he's come back and been here. So to pray for Jesus to return, that's rejoicing in our blessed hope that we have as Christians, that we know Jesus is going to win in the end. And then he says, be patient when you have tribulations. We all have them, right? We all have problems and concerns, and things go wrong. Relatives get sick. Family gets sick. It's stuff comes up that you think you can't overcome. And Paul tells us, just as Jesus told, be patient. If you're a Christian and you pray about it, God will find a solution. It may not be immediate. It may not be the one you want exactly. But you need to be patient when you have tribulations. Patience is a virtue. It's something you should strive to have. It helps you to persevere in those times of trouble that you will all have. And we all know that in the end, God will prevail in your life if God is in your life. He will take care of those tribulations. Then Paul says, continue steadfastly in prayer. We say this all the time. Pray without ceasing. I've told you that before. And I've told you how to pray. First thing you do is you give God the glory. Heavenly, great, whatever, to God. Give him the glory. And then you thank him for what he has done for you, because we've all been blessed in many ways. Simply because of where you were born, you were blessed. And then you pray for other people. And then lastly, being humble, you pray for yourself. It's a simple way to pray, and it's easy to remember. But you have to remember, like I told you a couple months ago, you don't bribe God. You don't say, God, give me $1 million and I'll give half of it to the church. That doesn't work. That just doesn't work, I guess is the best way for me to put it. And then Paul goes on and he says, be hospitable. Welcome people into your homes and your church and your life. Be open to helping other people by being hospitable. Offer a helping hand when someone needs it. We've done that here. We've seen people that needed help in some way. We've got the blessing box out here that's open for anybody that needs help to come take something out of it. And they do occasionally. It's still every once in a while there's some things gone. So we're being hospitable in that matter. Just other things you can do being hospitable. If you're checking out in Walmart and you've got 2 items and the person in front of you won't let you in front of them, don't be that person. If somebody behind you's got 1 or 2 items, come through. Especially if it's an elderly person or a woman with 3 screaming kids. But that's just being hospitable. That's being kind. That's being nice. And that's what he's talking about here when Paul says, be hospitable to other people. Then he also, now we're getting into the tough part. He says, bless, do not curse those who persecute you. Treat your enemies as if they were your friends. Now, I'm not saying you have to go out to dinner with them tonight. You don't have to call them on the phone this afternoon. But you don't have to curse them and treat them the way they treat you. That's what he's talking about here. Best way to get back at your enemies is to be nice to them. Heaps coals on their head. Remember, it says that. More than one place in the Bible it says that. And then he says, rejoice with the rejoicing and weep with the weeping. When people have something to celebrate, celebrate with them. Don't be jealous. Congratulate them. Let them know that you're happy that they have been successful in whatever they're doing. And just conversely, if someone is weeping, you may not know what to say. It's difficult when you go to a funeral home and the spouse is sitting there that's just lost their spouse. You don't know what to say. Sometimes all you got to do is sit down and listen and say, I'm here. If you need me, call me. If you want to talk, let me know. I'll listen. Sometimes you don't have to say anything. They want to talk about it. And just be there for them. You may not know what to say, but just be there. And then Paul goes on and says, be humble. Don't think of yourself as wiser than other people. I don't care how smart you are, there's somebody smarter. Always is. I've met some very, very intelligent people in my life, but I'm sure there are many, many other people out there a lot wiser than they were. So don't think that you are the smartest person in the room. Somebody like Charles may prove you wrong, because Charles is an engineer. He's well educated, knows a lot of stuff, don't you, Charles? And he can discuss a lot of things that he knows about. So, we may know a lot, but I guarantee you there's someone else that knows more. So don't ever think that you're better than someone else. In other words, don't be conceited around other people because you think you know more than them. And consequently, when you're in a room with someone that they don't really have an education, they don't know much, then you come down to their level. Talk about football. Talk about garden or whatever. Just be hospitable with them. Be humble. Don't consider yourself wiser or better than them simply because you're different from them in little ways. We're red, yellow, black, and blue, whatever, white, and we got green eyes and blue eyes and hazel eyes and brown eyes. We're all created in the image of God. You're no better than the Navajo Indians. You're no better than the Maasai tribes in Kenya and Tanzania. You're no better than the Sami people in Sweden, Norway, Finland, and Russia. You're no better than the Huli men of New Guinea or the Dogon people of West Africa or the unusual people that come from California. You're no better than any of them. Then Paul goes on to say, do not repay evil for evil. I wish Tony had been here to hear that. That was it. Do not repay evil for evil. Do you know what you do when someone hurts you and you turn around and hurt them? You have just doubled the amount of evil. You've increased it. Evil plus evil equals twice as much evil. Do not repay evil for evil. The Old Testament, people say, well, the Old Testament says an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, right? That was never meant for individual humans. It was meant as a deterrent to enforce right actions by people. It was never meant that if someone takes your eye, you take their eye. It's not meant eye. That's not what it meant. And if you'll read all the other laws that go right along with it, you'll understand what I'm trying not so very well to say up here. He goes on and says, act correctly when in the presence of non-believers. Don't just go along with the crowd. Don't act like people who don't believe when you're with them. Continue to act like a Christian, to do the things we've been talking about. I remember when I was little, I'd tell Mama I wanted to do something, and she'd say, why do you want to do that? And I said, because everybody else is doing it. And she would say, if everybody else was jumping off a bridge, would you jump off a bridge? Live in peace, not strife with others. Now this is a hard one. Some people just want to live in strife. Some people just want to be angry. You just can't get along with them no matter what you do. Maybe the way to live in peace with those people is to just avoid them. Would it be okay sometime for a Christian just to turn around and walk away? I think it would. Some people you can't, they just going to live in strife and anger and hatred. And as a Christian, we shouldn't be exposed to that. And when you get to the point to where you realize there's nothing I can do for this person, turn around and walk away. I know we're supposed to bring them to Christ, and you make an effort to do that, and they keep refusing and cursing you and doing the wrong thing and trying to influence you to do that also. Turn around and walk away. I think that's a perfect way to do that, how to overcome evil with good. You're not going to change their ways. My best friend in high school was Mike Davis. He died at the age of 22. When we got out of school, I went to Tech and then became a teacher, and he went to work offshore. And I mean, he was a big guy, not fat. He was about 6'3", broad shoulders and trim at the hip like the guy in the song. One night he got off the rig from work and he drove all the way back to Dubach, and about 4 o'clock in the morning he ran off the road and hit a clay embankment, and it killed him. He died of blood loss before anybody found him. He was a tough guy. We started hanging out in the 10th grade. Mike had a foul mouth. He liked to drink. He liked to party. He drove fast. All he wanted to do was have a good time. After we'd been hanging out for 2 or 3 months, I was at his house one day, and his mother, Miss India Davis, told me, she said, "Steve, I'm glad you're hanging around with Mike. I've noticed a change in him for the better. Please continue to be his friend." Well, I was only acting like a Christian, like my mother taught me to be. That's all I was doing. There was a brotherly love there. We challenged each other. When we made good grades, we celebrated together. The things that we owned, we shared together. I had to talk him out of a fight with the police one night on the Tech campus. And he said, "Okay, Steve, whatever you think we ought to do." He will always be my best friend, except for Billy Rude. And you know what? I think today, maybe, just maybe, Mike is in heaven. Maybe I had a Christian influence on him. Maybe I was acting like a Christian around him, like I've been talking about and like my mother told me to do. I hope that's true, and I hope I get to see my best friend again one day. Who have you had a good Christian influence on? Who could you have a good Christian influence on? Don't miss that opportunity. Behave like a Christian. Amen.